So there are a lot of people who want to get into management consulting, and just like any other job, there's a huge competition in for management consulting positions as well, especially with the big companies like Accenture, Deloitte, PwC. So
I saw your plug there. I got that.
so what's the best advice to transition into management consulting career, as you had background in Navy earlier, right? And then you transition into management consulting. So what would be your advice?
So the transition path, I think, is it's obviously a lot easier to transition into management consulting with a background in some kind of industry. That having a skill set, knowing the industry that you're going to be going into from from the client side is definitely something that's worthwhile, and it's definitely something that raises you above where you're going to be. So that makes it easier. The next thing that I would say, which is just kind of generalized career advice for whatever you want to do, is that it's very, very important to build strong networks of advocates for you, and make sure that you are inserting yourself into whatever areas that align with you and your your persona, your background, and your experience. So, I mentioned before, I was in the military for a long time. That has paid huge dividends to me throughout my career, various aspects of my career, prior careers as well. The ability to have that kind of like veterans network is incredibly valuable. The thing that I would say, obviously not everybody served, and that's completely fine. But the thing that I would say is whatever niche you can place yourself in, whether that's an alumni club, whether that is some kind of volunteer effort, a charity or something that you do work with, it's great to have those things, and especially with charities and things like that. I think that's something that plays very well specifically within the consulting space. I think that shows up very well on a resume, and it gives good talking points, especially for those that maybe don't have a lot of industry experience. But really making sure that you're leveraging every possible angle that you can to build your network and find a way in, because there's no shortage of applicants. And I know that there are some people that kind of shun away from maybe networking or trying to really pursue a specific avenue into a company, such as like a diversity hiring program or something like that. And I cannot encourage people enough to take advantage of those avenues into organizations, to open doors for you and to get your resume seen by people, rather than just thrown onto a stack with everyone else. It's a very competitive workspace. It's a very competitive career field. And so that's something that's definitely to be considered. It's just building that network up, reaching out to people, and kind of being fearless about it as well. Because I had done some sales work in one of my past careers, and I had a boss that asked me why I wasn't asking for a referral when I was selling stuff. And I tried to explain to her a little bit how it just kind of made me feel uncomfortable and everything else. And she said, I can understand that. That's definitely something a lot of people feel. However, she's like, if somebody reaches out to you and they say, hey, Nate, I was hoping you could help me with something, right? I was hoping you could do this thing for me. it would really help me out. I know that you've got this connection to this company, whatever else, would you be willing to give me a recommendation? My answer is almost always yes, right? And she's like, how does it make you feel? So I looked at how that made me feel. Well, I feel important, right? I feel like I've got, something of value to offer somebody. And, it's a good feeling. And she says, well, why wouldn't it feel like that to anybody else? And the truth is, it does. It feels like that to everybody. Being in that position where you can help somebody is something that I think a lot of people underestimate people's willingness to do. And it might be difficult to reach somebody, but definitely, be fearless about it. Go out there, get those recommendations, get people that are inside, higher level people, and do your best to impress upon them your value and show them how you can, make it through. The other thing that I would say that is very important, specifically within management consulting, and this folds over to most consulting areas, is to get a very, very strong understanding of the company, the areas in which they work, the way that they operate, how they're stratified, the business units that they have within their organization, and pick the places that you want to go before you start having conversations with people. Show them when you start putting yourself out there, to hooking up with people on LinkedIn, or meeting people, or whatever avenue you choose to take. Make sure that you are showing them that you already have a plan. You want to give them a feel and a sense that there could be no other place for you except for, for me, it was, financial services, talent and organization management consulting. It's that stokes their ego a little bit. It shows them that you understand the company, you understand how it operates, and it shows that you're prepared and you have a plan. You're not just looking for a job, you're looking for a specific job. You're looking for a career. You're looking for something that you're going to build within that organization. And then the other thing, which is the last thing, which is unpopular, but I think very realistic, is for people that have industry experience. And this, I speak to this from personal experience. When you have industry experience, I operated at a fairly high level of responsibility and scope in my roles that I held previously. And my initial mindset put me at a level higher that I came in at. And it was difficult, and it was a kind of like come to Jesus moment that I had with, do I really want to take a little bit of a step back to move forward? And what I ultimately came to was, yes, I was willing to take a step back from both a scope and responsibility standpoint, and not for nothing, but a little bit of, not too much, but a small amount of a financial step back as well, to be able to get myself into a position with a company that I really wanted to be part of, in an area with the freedom to be aligned to an area that I found very engaging and very meaningful and enjoyed working in, because I was coming from a company that I really liked, but I was growing to despise the role that I had there. And so I would caution people to make sure that you temper your expectations as to the level that you may or may not come in, and make sure that you are, if you've got industry experience, make sure that you are ready financially to be able to possibly take a step back for that. And also make sure that psychologically and your ego, you're gonna be prepared to do that stuff. And I think that's one of the really cool things about consulting as a career choice, is that you have the ability to really define the trajectory that you want your career to take. And I think that's the case at most consultancy firms. Probably not all, but and I'm sure it differs with what specific sector you're in. But I think at a lot of them, there is a little bit more of that autonomy to do that. So, and back to my earlier point, that again is why I feel it's very important to have a plan and a specific idea of where you want to go when you are talking to people about the potential of working for them.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing advice. Thank you so much, Nate. And I totally agree with your point when you said, if you ask someone for help, like, would you be willing to refer me? Like, it feels great, right, to give back, because at some point of time when even I and like you must have, when you have searched your job, you must have asked the same question to someone, right? So we have been through the same path. And sometimes people hesitate to ask this question, right? Or maybe they ask it too early without showing a passion for it.
Sure.
That's when it doesn't work out. But yeah, great advice. Thank you so much. Cool. So my next question is, Nate, what are the best resources to prepare for management consulting interviews, both in terms of books, websites, blogs?
So there was, I am not in any way getting compensated for this, but a number of the interviews that I did at Deloitte and some of the other firms that I interviewed at did go pretty heavy into the case study stuff, and that was something that I had to prepare myself for. There was a really good, and it's a very inclusive thing. The individual's name is Victor Cheng, Cheng, and he has a video series and a book about case interviews and just interviewing for positions at consulting firms, whether it's big three, kind of that avenue, or whatever it is, that goes very in depth on that stuff. That's always that was a really helpful resource that I used. A huge resource is the company websites. The company websites are out there to basically provide information to clients about what they do in their specific sector. And there is a huge amount of information that is available on the company websites about the companies. And so that is a great way to be able to, as I mentioned before, finding your plan, finding the specific area that you really want to go into and isolating that down. And oftentimes, there are a lot of times where, specifically in consulting, the papers that are published, whether it's white papers or articles or whatever else, those are usually available to the general public in most cases. Sometimes they're sanitized for, to remove client data and things like that, but those are often available either on the website or on various business journal formats. And something that I don't think a lot of people do is looking at those articles, looking at a white paper that was written or something like that, by that company, and then looking at who wrote that and reaching out to that person directly on LinkedIn and just, introduce yourself. Hi, my name's Nate. I happen to find the paper that you wrote on, topic X, and I just found it really, really engaging. I know that you work at Accenture, and I'd really love to be a part of some of this work, and I'd love to get a sense of kind of how you do it and what goes on. Introduce yourself. Those resources that are available there are I think invaluable for how you're going to prepare yourself to speak about your value to the company, because that's something that, if you know where they're aligned and what they're doing, that's something that can really help you isolate kind of your pitch and how you're going to use the words and the cultural verbiage that they've got to sell yourself to them, which is something that I think is very important to do. The other thing that I would say is a really good resource as well is I don't have a specific one that I would recommend. I know Victor Cheng's company does this, but I would definitely, if you are in any way uncertain about the quality of your resume, I would definitely seek out professional assistance with that. And there are many, probably too many resources and companies and individuals that will do that for a fee. They can be very expensive, but I do feel like that is worth it. It's a very important investment into the way you market yourself, and I would use that and use somebody who has a huge amount of expertise in that area to make sure all the blocks are checked and you're putting forth your best possible face, because that is in many instances the first and possibly only exposure that you're going to get to somebody if you don't move on. And so you want that initial, you want that initial impression to be as strong as possible. So to kind of backline all that stuff, I definitely check out Victor Cheng's stuff on case interviews and just the overall interviewing for not just management, but consulting jobs. Pardon me. And then really hit the company websites hard and find as many resources you can there. That's a great place to start building your network within that company and build some advocates for yourself. And then finding the best possible person to create and write your resume for you is very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Nate. And so, Nate, as you mentioned that you worked with, not worked, but you interviewed with multiple companies. What is the general interview format that you have observed for management consulting position? Are those mostly behavioral, technical, or all the case interviews?
So that it differed quite a bit. There were only a couple of places where I did what I would say more intensive case interviews. McKinsey, I had a pretty intensive case interview, like anxiety-inducing case interview. And Deloitte, I had a case interview with. There was kind of because I was coming from industry and not right out of college hire. A number of the other firms that I interviewed with did not do case interviews, or did, I guess what I would say, they said they had a case interview section. They said they had a case interview section, but in reality, it was just kind of a quick responsive thinking exercise. So the case interviews are, and this is odd for me to kind of think of because I don't know, for those of you that ever prepped for an exam or something, you like cram all this stuff in your head. You try to get it out of there as quickly as possible because it's a painful experience. But the case interviews, the stuff, as I mentioned before, the stuff from Victor really helped me out with that, and his book was very helpful in just how to break down problems and things like that. So I think most firms go pretty heavy on the cases for those that aren't coming from industry, for out of college hires, just because you don't have the experience to kind of talk to, so they want to see how you think. But in my experience, I had usually the initial set would usually I would usually get a call, and I would have an initial screening interview. At almost every place that I interviewed, with I'm not going to say, there was one exception, I won't say it. The screening interview was extremely conversational. Just, want to get a sense for you, want to understand where you're at, why Accenture, or, why Deloitte, or why Bain. what do you know about the company, time to ask questions, a very casual back and forth kind of experience. And it was good. The next part from that was usually some sort of behavioral piece. And so so there was usually some sort of behavioral piece after that was the next interview, and they would set that up. Those typically, the way those worked were given, they're going to ask you, hey, talk to me about a time talk to me about a time you faced adversity. Talk to me about a time you had to work somebody through a difficult situation. Talk to me about a time where, and this was one that came up quite a bit. Talk to me about a time, you had to appear to be an expert in an area where you did not feel you were, and how did that look? How did you feel? Things like that. So, as you're going through those behavioral interviews, I think that what it's really important to do is to have about 3 to 4 stories to tell about your, whether it's about your career, if you've been in industry before, whether it's personal stories, sports, volunteering, whatever it is, but have some stories that talk to your experience and your ability to be able to work through adversity or deal with difficult situations or whatever it is. And I think most people have those kind of stories, have those built in your head already ready to go. So you can sit there and kind of tailor, and have them be generic enough stories to be able to tailor them to how the question is asked and present it that way. The other thing with the behavioral interviews, something that I found really helpful was I had my resume. I wrote a resume, and then I had that resume reviewed by a person that does that. And something that was very helpful for me within that process was he had recommended that I go down line by line through my notes and like my bullet points on my resume and be able to talk through the specifics of each one of those. And that was very helpful, not only in the behavioral stuff, because it brought back to mind, the specific granular details of each one of those bullet points, how I got, you're going to have bullet points that say, you want to give the action, you want to state the problem, give the action, quantify the results. And so to break it down further than that and really kind of think to myself how I went through that and take notes on that, that was very helpful in the behavioral stuff for me. After behavioral, usually went on to a technical interview. The technical interview, in my experience, all of those were probably, I would say, the most uncomfortable. And I don't know if that's just my persona, because I tend to be kind of casual and I can just talk to people. But those were that felt very much like a test to me, even more so than a case interview. It felt very much like a test to me, and I got a very strong sense that there was a right and a wrong answer to when questions were asked me. And so questions that are typically asked along those lines, they're usually given to you by somebody that is a practitioner in that field. And so for me in financial services, there was a lot of specifics on securities law. There were a lot of specifics around regulations and just financial premises and concepts and things like that. How would I value something like this? And so the technical stuff, those I would say, if anything, that was where I struggled the most, just because I don't think my personality really matched up with that. I would imagine for people that are more heavily on the technology side, if that's your world and you're in it all the time, you may be a little bit more attuned to those, so it might not be that might not be as challenging for you. And then off of that, there was, after the case, after the tech and the behavioral, depending on the level of the role that I went through, I would usually have a series of interviews with other leaders in the company, leaders of the practice area, other managers, so peers. For one senior manager level role that I interviewed for, I met with a total of, I think, 9 people over the course of 3 different interviews. So it was 3-hour sessions, and it was about 45 minutes with each person. So that's something that is typically done. Those, again, those really vary by the company, by the practice area, and by the person that you're interviewing with, because those are the ones where they're just trying to get a feel for you and suss out what your personality is, whether you're going to be a good fit for the team, those types of things. So those, typically I would say, I think for the consultant role that I interviewed for, it was usually maybe 2 to 3 people. Manager, I interviewed for several manager positions. Those were probably more like 5 to 6 different people. And then the senior manager roles that I interviewed for were much more intensive than that. And there was also at least one instance where there was a panel where I sat in front of 4 people. So, but that's kind of my sweet spot as a speaker and, selling myself. So those, personally, to me, just always, those felt very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.